everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we will discuss on how data fight child exploitations. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Tom Rose and Mr. Daniel.
Hi.
Today's session is very important because long time I was in Malaysia. So Malaysia has human trafficking issues, and most important thing is that we need to solve these things. We know that from Jackson, Singapore, and BRAC, it's a world largest NGO, and it's from Bangladesh. They are working together to solving human trafficking. It's very interesting topic, and Tom has keen interest about these issues, and these issues is real, especially in the emerging economy, because many people migrate from country like India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Myanmar to the other countries, and there are a lot of problems. So this realistic problem solutions, I think Tom has. He is advocate for this topic, and we will discuss. And definitely, World Talent Economy Forum. We want to collaborate with Tom Ross Agency for solving this problem, and hopefully we can bring realistic solution for human being. Mr. Tom.
Yes, thanks, Sharif, for doing this series. Let's start by doing this 2-minute video for our campaign. And it kind of outlines quickly all the 6 initiatives that we are pushing with this campaign. So let me just start it now. Yes, so that is a very quick overview of our campaign initiatives, the 6 primary initiatives that we are pushing for in this campaign. And let me just get out of here. And so what we're doing, as you saw quickly, there's 6 different initiatives that we are pushing, and this series, at least the first 6 episodes of this series, will be focusing on these 6 initiatives. And this first one is APEX, which stands for Anti-Planetary Exploitation. And so, there's many reasons that people identify as being transhuman. Some want to live longer. They want radical life extensions. Some want the freedom to enhance their biology without the threat of the state looking over their shoulder. Some want to see artificial intelligence as an ally and not a threat. And so, but the reason that I originally identified as a transhuman is because I had a 6-hour-long road trip, and I got to listen to the USTP's, the United States Transhumanist Party's Constitution and Bill of Rights. It took about 6 hours to get through it. It's a very voluminous document. But in that Constitution, there are sections that relate specifically to my cause, which is fighting human trafficking and child exploitation. And this was the only party that had serious discussions and aspects of their constitution that identified this as a need, as a threat, as something we should fight for. And so that's why I came into the party and into transhumanism, because of this fight for against child exploitation. And so I don't necessarily want to live longer, and I don't want to upload my consciousness to a hard drive. Although I do see AI as an ally, and it's a big part of my my personal campaign is to alleviate the fear of AI and to see it as an ally. And so really the whole original reason I came into the party and into transhumanism is because of this fight against human trafficking and child exploitation. And that's when I decided to run for the presidency for the party. That was my cause. That's why that's what I identified with most, and that's why it's the first initiative of my campaign. And it's called Apex. So we can get into the details of it, and we will be doing that today. We've got a campaign ad that I did about it. I've got an infographic. I've got white papers that I can share. But that's kind of where we are now. We're going to do the next 6 episodes every Tuesday on these 6 initiatives. And so I'll open it up now to Daniel if he's got any comments.
Glad to be running with you, Tom. I mean, one great thing about national office is the bully pulpit, the legal force it gives you. But the next best thing you might say is, in the process of running, the ideas that you can put forward into the Overton window, which is a term that says what's acceptable to talk about in mainstream communications. So, yeah, it's a great topic because let's face it, the children are the future. We're not doing the best job we could be with the young people in lots of ways. Something I think is almost a form of unrecognized exploitation is the time that children are spending online exposed to questionable ideas. I just heard a poll that said young people who spend 2 hours on TikTok or more every day, 17% of them don't believe that NASA astronauts ever went to the moon. So, this is, and then another statistic, people born in this millennium, half of them, a lot of them don't believe that the Earth is round, or 17% of them, I think. So really, there's this collective forgetting of the past. We somehow need to counter this, and I think every human action should be made accountable through best evidence practices. We have big data, we have AI, we have geospatial informatics that is really the neglected part of the information revolution, and that's coupling information to location, and we've just begun to do that. But I think if we mentor the children that are physically nearby by helping their schools do things like start community gardens, is a project that's good to get children into STEM, makerspace, let them have creative ideas and access to tools that create creative, unique inventions. The child's mind is so fertile, up till the age of 8, and then society kind of clamps down and takes it over in a lot of ways. But I would say we can use open source intelligence and AI to solve a lot of human trafficking and exploitation problems in ways that aren't being solved right now, and I'm excited to see that happen. There's lots of things that could happen in the voluntary sector rather than in the military force-backed sector, which is inherently what government is. It's a monopoly on military force over a limited area. But people are inherently cooperative, I think, and they will do things, without being forced to do them. If you just set the ground rules fairly and have a level playing field. So I think that's what all of our initiatives can be integrated with philosophy like that I'm hoping to put forward.
Yeah, great. Agreed.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith.
Sharif, great topic today as you look at this, and you've heard me talk in the past about how the world has become connected and everything's digital, and particularly when you look at fighting things like child exploitation, and even things like the sex trade and others like that. Data and this digital world is so important, and it's one that as you look across all of humankind, we're seeing just tremendous advances in there, because the internet has become really our 21st century frontier, and in many ways it's still wild, kind of like the Wild West. And we have good guys on it, we have bad guys on it, we have really a way of looking at people who want to exploit whatever they can, take advantage of privacy and cybercrime, and you have the criminals there. But really, some of the worst, as I begin to look at, are some of the people who are taking advantage of the children and the traffickers there. But we're beginning to see how more and more of the tools we see based around the internet are really coming back and helping take track of and try to deal with this. And one of the big challenges we have today is that it's so easy today to steal our personal information. And we as a society have become fairly heavy users of social media. Sharif, you heard me on a prior broadcast joke that I'm really glad that when I was growing up, we didn't have smartphones with cameras recording stuff and sharing it with the world. Because when I was young and did foolish things, I'm so glad that I was young and did foolish things where they could not be recorded and saved forever. But today we're in a time where we do that. But the fact that we do that actually is an advantage when we look at how to fight child exploitation and what we're trying to do with that. Because we are really putting more of our information into the cloud. And with the Internet of Things and the Internet of Connected Things, more and more of that is going up to the cloud as well. And, we see hackers of all types taking advantage of it, including those who stalk people and engage in abuse of all types. So, for example, Dropbox is a company that has begun to take pretty heavy action against this, and they've and Microsoft has done this too. Both of them have implemented child abuse software detection to kind of identify exploited pictures of servers on their servers and cloud products. And what they would do is, as children are identified as either being missing, exploited, or they see children in poses that have been shared on the internet that are clearly being exploited, they are using the power of facial recognition, of image recognition. They're using the power of using the data science to connect that back into appropriate databases to help identify child exploitation images. And as Donna Henry had talked about geospatial. They're using the geospatial information, not just the classic geospatial information you get with something like ARC, GPS, and others, but but in a lot of the things on the internet today, they are geotagged. So that's why, for example, with the conflict over in the Ukraine right now in Russia, on many of the images, people can access the geotags and say, is that is that really in Ukraine? Or is that something that was done someplace else and is falsely under disinformation being used to identify this is in Ukraine, even though it could have been any place else. That same type of information, though, that is hidden from most criminals who are using the internet is being used to help fight the child exploitation there. And that is just a tremendous benefit that we have really going forward on it. And folks like Microsoft and Dropbox and Amazon, with part of what they're doing with its elastic computing cloud services, are actually bringing services up onto that. And universities are really getting into the play with this too. I mean, some of the universities where there's research explicitly on how to use data on this topic include universities like University of Texas San Antonio, University of Nepal in Italy, and others, where they're really doing it, and like Northwest. And what's interesting is you look back at what they're doing. They're algorithm engineers, and they are really developing better algorithms to really go through the internet quickly for images and videos of childs being raped, of them being trafficked, of them being exploited. And they want to use that to help identify the unknowns there. But they're also using it to find children who are missing, children who have run away, children who've been abducted, and like that. They're also wanting to gather evidence against the criminals there. But the third thing they're trying to do is they're wanting to remove these images from the internet, the files from the internet, to both protect the minor and to take away some of the mystique of this type of, uh, of image for the kids. Also, in the United States, there was a act that passed Congress a number of years ago called Protect Our Children Act, and it was the starting point of providing really much better resources to let law enforcement and corporations to have better resources to fight child exploitation and trafficking. And you're seeing them develop worldwide. You often, Sharif, know I talk about Brazil and some of the things they're doing there. And as a developing nation, they are really pushing some areas in this. And in Brazil, the Brazilian government has developed an algorithm technology called New Direct Forensics, and it's NUDECTIV forensics, and it's being used to identify child pornographic files, and it's being managed by the Brazilian Federal Police, and it is not perfect, but it's a great example of what is being done to begin to do forensics across this digital world we live in, across the internet, across the different sets. And it has been really very good about helping bring that into framework in Brazil as a solution that's being there. So it's something that's being actively worked on in both the developed nations and the developing nations, because this is a global problem. and technology really has a place that can help there. Just like we saw in Africa, once they began to put pictures on the internet of the children that had been kidnapped and were forced into slavery, and the women that had been kidnapped and placed into slavery in Africa, using the same type of technology, we were able to identify them over the internet, go back and actually track where some of them had originated in Africa, and begin to bring resources to bear, which eventually helped them get released and return to their family. So yes, technology has a good place in this. Data has a huge place. Now there's the old saying that data is the new oil. I disagree with that. Data is doubling at least every 2 years. In some areas, like the Internet of Things and others, it's going even faster. But what we're seeing today is we're seeing data now being in the refinery stage, where just like a oil refinery, you separate it into multiple different products. We can do the same thing with data now. And this is a place where the data is being refined to help us with societal problems like child exploitation. And that's one of the great things you can do with this type of data. So Sharif, thank you for letting me throw those comments into the program today and really give you a little bit more of the systems view of how the data is being used to fight this very critical problem.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Mr. Tom has more presentations and more interesting issues on these things. So,
Well,
Mr. Davis,
AI is a great tool to fight this. There are apps out there like Traffic Cam, where you can just take 3 photos of whatever hotel room you're in, and it'll match that to a global database, and and try to find some of these networks. But let me play a 1-minute campaign I did during the primary, which kind of outlines more specifically the idea I have for this initiative called Apex. See if I can get this shared. I'm Tom Ross, and I'm running for the U.S. Transhumanist Party's nomination for president in 2024. Child sex trafficking is insidious and increasing because none of us want to think about it, much less talk about it. But the reality is that within a mile or less of most people watching this video, there are children being abused. So for the sake of these children, we need to think about it and talk about it. Now, we all know that our personal data is being used to influence our purchasing behavior. Social media companies, device manufacturers, and service companies, they've partnered to fence in our focus and financial resources. But did you know that a trafficker's personal data can be leveraged to locate, identify, and hand law enforcement warrantable information that can free millions from trafficking networks? I'm calling my effort APEX, Anti-Planetary Exploitation. I am advocating for an agency to use the power of PRISM, which is an NSA tool to monitor and collect data from suspected terrorists, and Section 314B of the Patriot Act, which allows financial institutions to share information in a safe harbor to identify and report possible terrorist activities. Yeah, it's dark to think about human trafficking and child exploitation, but it's not nearly as dark as the reality is for these children. Yeah, okay, so that is kind of an outline of the initiative using PRISM and the Patriot Act, sections of the Patriot Act that will allow financial institutions to share information in a safe harbor. Now, this says, I've got a lot of questions and a lot of people coming at me. It's like, why would you want to use the NSA or the Patriot Act, which most Americans see as threatening our civil liberties for this effort? And one of my answers to that is, sure, these may be nefarious, but if we use them for good, instead, if we use them for we the people instead of on the we the people, not that the NSA or the Patriot Act needs a public relations campaign, but we need to lose the denial that they have all of this information. Even our social media companies here in America have so much data on us. We need to get out of the denial that privacy is even a thing anymore. It's not. Nothing can be encrypted totally. So it's really important to understand that. Can you still hear me? Okay, I'm frozen for some reason. But it's really important that we use these systems from the NSA and this part of the Patriot Act that will allow financial institutions to share information for this purpose. And again, we need to get out of the denial that because we have surrendered so much of our personal data to these. When our terms and conditions, when we check that mark, we're not reading them, and we have released so much of our personal information. And so we need to understand, at least in my point of view, privacy was a great idea, but it no longer exists. Everything can be unencrypted. And so knowing that, we need to force our government and its acts and its agencies and our social media companies here in America to use the data we already know they have for good. And and this can be a limited time thing. It can be, it can be sunsetted within a year or two, but I think it's really important to use these tools to fight human trafficking because there's so much data that they have. And like I said in that ad, they have as much data on these human traffickers, and they could probably hone in, especially now that PRISM by the NSA is not as broad as it was since Snowden. Now it's more narrow, where they have to be very specific on who they're looking at. So they can look at metadata and just data in general of traffickers and find out, maybe common things that they buy, duct tape, hand, cuffs, different things. There's a whole criteria they can use to identify where these people are. We already know where a lot of these network corridors are. There's a big one through Colorado here. There's one through Nebraska. There's corridors where this trafficking happens. And so there's already that information out there. So I'm proposing that with Apex, and I put planetary in there for a reason, because this is a global issue. Can be an agency that's focused on using these tools and that section of the Patriot Act to hunt down these child trafficking networks and put a big dent in this thing. This is the oldest crime against humanity since we became a civilization and before then. And it's growing and it's increasing. That's because it's insidious, because nobody wants to talk about it or think about it. When you start thinking about these things, it's horrible. But it is something we need to face. And so for a limited time, if we lose our denial and we shed some light into that darkness, we can make a big dent in this scourge of humanity. And so, so I have gotten a lot of people wondering, why would you want to use the NSA or the Patriot Act, for this? And that's the point of that, is to have this data that we know that they have for good, to use it for the American people, not on the American people. And a lot of people say, well, since Snowden, PRISM has changed, it's more narrow, but I think really it's just gotten more clandestine. It's, sure, it's gotten more narrow. There's certain legalities that they need to face now to narrowly search for specific people. But it also means there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. Sometimes when you shed a light on something, it finds a darker place in the shade to hide. But this is a way to use the data that we know that they have for fighting something that's really important. And I think that's the first things first when it comes to AI. If we're not using AI to save children and exploited children or human trafficking, what's the point of having it at all? Sure, ChatGPT, we can ask it interesting questions, we can format our theses, but if we're not using AI to save a child that's within a mile of most of us watching this thing, that's being abused or exploited or trafficked, what's the point? That's the whole reason I came into this movement, is because this party has in their constitution ways to fight this scourge, this cause. And so that's why it's the first initiative that I'm pushing forward in this campaign.
Excellent. Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, it's a worldwide problem, and I think it's not only something to attack on the front end, but on the back end. What are the factors that cause people to become trafficked and exploited? Right now, there's almost 100 million people that are refugees. They're basically on the move, and a lot of these people pay a smuggler to move them from a country where they can't have a good life to a place where they can have a good life, to where they have human rights. And I think uh, one solution is going to be micronations and seasteading. There's a team that I'm on for the X Prize, actually, that's attempting to build an equatorial belt, 30 kilometers wide, of seasteads that would be an open place where refugees could find a place to live safely and have economic security and have human rights security. It's not that far out of an idea. Really, we could do it. We could start doing it tomorrow. People are actually working on seasteads. There are people that live permanently on cruise ships, although those are more the wealthy people. But this tragedy, in the Mediterranean with the refugees that drowned on the ship recently, they were in distress, and the government knew they were in distress and didn't send aid. They just basically, I think they're right now they're taking a stance that, oh, this will send a message. If we just let people die, that'll teach them not to hire smugglers to move them around the world. So this is a terrible problem. And there are three different types of refugees. There's internally displaced persons, there's migrants, and there's asylum seekers. And about 41% of them are under the age of 18. So attacking this problem is going to go a long way toward the child exploitation issue. And another thing that will attack the problem on the back end is reformatting the economy to be an economy based on quality of life and not quantity of products. Someone once said, if you're not doing something because you love to be doing it, you don't deserve to get paid for it. And this is maybe mostly true of artists, but it's true of a lot of jobs, and a lot of jobs are going to be displaced by automation and artificial intelligence in the coming years. It's going to be harder for job seekers, but it's going to become easier for entrepreneurs and startup people, because AI will actually assist people starting new enterprises better than it will assist people trying to get a typical employer-employee relationship. I think another economic thing that will attack the exploitation problem is a pricing system based on people's income. If you price products based on increments of time of how much people earn over time, then you will structurally eliminate a lot of inequality. Just the act of buying and selling will tend to address the inequality issue. And it does it. This is in a voluntary way, and actually, it creates more business for the people that price their businesses and services this way. So that's going to be exciting to see that catch on. I think let's look at the Earth population as a series of Dunbar tribes. They say the Dunbar number is about the number of people that come to your funeral. You can form about 150 close relationships in a lifetime, and we can use AI to create these chains of interlocking Dunbar numbers and put them closer to each other and have them doing things that they love to do with each other. And that's going to be a huge frontier for the economy, for addressing that exploitation issue. Tom talked about decrypting. We haven't totally lost privacy, but we've lost a lot of it. And we probably, as a public figure, it's like, I don't really worry about my privacy. But a lot of bad activities have been conducted on the Bitcoin network, using that, holding people for ransom, pay me in Bitcoin into this account. And people think that the Bitcoin network is private, but actually criminals have been caught because those Bitcoin blockchain transactions are a public record, and forensic economic investigators have tracked down criminal activity by looking at that blockchain of the Bitcoin network. Of course, there's other cryptocurrencies that claim to be totally anonymous, but most of the other cryptocurrencies have been hacked. The Bitcoin algorithm is still pretty solid as far as not having been hacked. I mean, people have lost their passwords to their accounts, but it's basically never been spoofed because it's kind of a bulletproof way to you have to have all the computers nodes on the thing agreeing. So anyway, that's to speak to the forensic decryption issue about exploitation. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to attack this problem, and AI is going to be huge. Big data for ending big exploitation. I think it's a great program that we're embarking on. Thanks.
Hey, David, before you go, I want to show the infographic that I came up because I want to get your ideas on it. With your knowledge, I think I would really be valuable to get to what you think about this. This is the infographic that's up on their site, our site, and on the USTP site for this first initiative. Basically says human trafficking and child exploitation are terrible crimes that harm our society. It's time to take action to fight against these crimes using all available resources. So I'm suggesting that we do have a whole new agency that's focused on this. And here's the problem. The problem is obviously child sex trafficking and exploitation are difficult to detect and prevent. Victims often suffer in plain sight, enduring terrible abuse. The issue is growing and we need to act quickly. Now, the solution I'm proposing is that we have Apex, a new agency that will use data to identify and disrupt trafficking networks. We'll use PRISM, a tool currently used to monitor suspected terrorists to track traffickers. We'll also utilize Section 314B of the Patriot Act to follow the money and identify their networks. And that's the stuff that usually gets a lot of, promotes a lot of controversy in this plan. But again, it's a way to use these for good. And so the practical measures I'm proposing are to first establish this agency, Apex, and that will combat human trafficking specifically. It will, then I'd say expand PRISM. And when I say expand it, I mean expanding its use toward this end. We don't need to expand it so that it can spy on more people. I'm saying we need to expand it so that it can focus more directly on these human trafficking networks. And this could be a limited time. It could be sunsetted at some point. Again, also using the Section 314B of the Patriot Act, that will allow us to track the financial process of these traffickers and locate them. And this is in this act, it allows financial institutions to share this information in a safe harbor. It's very secure for them. And let's see. Also, a whole raise awareness campaign, a national educational process to let people know this is happening, to give them clues of what to look for, to identify children being trafficked. There's signs to look for. There's psychological cues that doctors should know about. If there's somebody coming in for a physical or what have you, there's ways to identify that this is happening in your neighborhood, and it is happening in most neighborhoods, most towns in America, and if not the world. So basically, the conclusion being that human trafficking and child exploitation are terrible crimes. By using data, we can identify networks, free victims, and punish traffickers. Apex is a vital tool in this fight, and we need policymakers' support. Using these terms like the Patriot Act or the NSA will get the attention of our policymakers and Congress. It also will get the attention of many people. That's kind of one of the ancillary benefits of proposing this is people are now paying attention to this. Wait, you want to use the NSA to fight human trafficking? And yes, that just gets them in the door. And so that's basically the simple 12th grade level version of how to propose this idea. And let me stop the screen here. And so I would really like to get David's views on this approach using PRISM, using the Patriot Act, and any ideas you have would be benefit. Now, again, all of these initiatives these are living documents. We have a year or so before the election to fine tune these initiatives. And that's the point, is to come on here, present the idea, but make them malleable. This is an open source campaign. I'm not set on these ideas, and already in the last couple of days, I've gotten some great ideas toward this end. And so again, we're going to take the time in this series to make these a living document, to fine tune these proposals and these initiatives, and so that by the time the election comes, we will have formidable ideas to share with the American public.
Before David start, I just want to share the real problem of Bangladesh. Around 1 million people from Myanmar, they actually come to Bangladesh as a refugee. And this problem is real for Bangladesh as well. But problem is that we do not see the exact solution for this 1 million people from United Nations, from the big countries or G7 or G20s, or they don't have specific contribution to secure these people life. So even the same thing I face in Malaysia. I saw there are hundreds of thousands of people. They are facing the same problem. So I believe that as I am a Bangladeshi, so I believe that the global supremacy, the global like USA, Canada, Australia, European communities, Japanese communities, those who have lot of resources and ability to negotiate with UN and solve this problem, you can help this 1 million people in Bangladesh. So, Mr. David Speed, how we can do that? How you people can help to my country or this 1 million people? Can you unmute, please?
Come on, you missed the best part of the answer. No, Dr. Sharif, Tom, I love this initiative, and what you outlined, Tom, I think is a very interesting approach. I'm going to answer part of yours in the chorus of what I'm going to say, though, because while you're talking about some explicit tools that are in the quiver of our nation's spy agencies, some of them under legislation have prohibition about using domestically.
Yeah.
And one you mentioned actually falls into that category. Because there are explicit regulations in the United States against using some of those tools on average citizens. And you tend to either go to the Pfizer court to use it or be past the international boundaries. And the international boundaries are an interesting one because a lot of child exploitation crosses international borders. And that is one of the challenges I think we see. And Sharif, that's directly related to what you're seeing in Bangladesh as well, is that this is not a nation-centered problem. And even though in the United States, we've got some excellent resources being put at them. And even the Department of Homeland Security here in the United States has programs that are being developed to address child exploitation. It has to do it in the context of everything else, because it not only looks at the kids, but it tries to apprehend the producers and the distributors and the people who really take this and makes it work across it. And so, Tom, if you want, one of my feedbacks on what you're seeing there is that you have to take what you're doing and bring more of a international flavor to it. Because if you look at the root causes of this, this is not a domestic issue. And it is clearly an international issue. It has to be tackled as an international issue. One of the things that I find that is just really exciting right now is that in the UK, there's some work being done in the UK that is really trying to look at ways to data mine this type of data. And the problem with a lot of child exploitation is it takes place in the dark. It's done out of the places where you can shine light upon it. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult to comprehend and do. And so what has been formed in UK is a global institute that is trying to collect all of this data and begin to use it as a way to tackle this problem, because the whole area of child exploitation is really has a lot of stigma on it all over the world and all over different uh, sections of society and culture and things. And it is often constrained by people involved with it of having a stigma, but also tremendous underreporting. And that makes it even harder to begin to try to find the data that's there. So in UK at the um, University of Edinburgh, they have established a foundation called the Human Dignity Foundation. And its vision is to safeguard children by taking a data-driven, evidence-based approach to dealing with this in a international view, because the only way to really solve this is with an international take. And they are looking across it from law enforcement to parents to regulatory to policymakers. And again, they're trying to take a data-driven, evidence-based support towards doing this, because there has to be a ways to do it, and it has to be very inclusive as you begin looking for it. You know, you see Interpol with a lot of data they're beginning to collect. You're seeing, as I mentioned earlier, some of the projects from uh, places like Microsoft and Dropbox and others beginning to look and how to take the this and deal with it. But you have to begin to take an integrated view to it, because connecting what happens to kids in this environment, both online and offline, is really very strategic today, because in our society, most of the children today do not recognize a dividing line between their online and offline lives. And this is really beginning to get there. And you have to begin to help connect the dots for children and for parents to really understand that. Because one of the statistics that just blew me away in this area is globally, 1 in 8 of every 8 children it has is either abused or exploited. Uh, and that's a horrible statistic. If I take away some of our communities and look deeper, that number even goes up. Uh, so, you know, you're more likely to have a child exploited than you are to being robbed, if you look at that in the number standpoints. So you have to begin to put together the plan to do it. I think that our tools are getting there. Uh, the one particular program in the international data collection tools, I would not use that one because of all the overhead with it. I believe developing an international version of that would be fantastic. Uh, the problem with the one, Tom, that you mentioned is a great reference point, but it's going to be protected by the means and methods part of the security classification. And it can never be used internationally outside of the Five Eyes.
Right.
And to be effective, you need something that can go beyond the Five Eyes and that can be used domestically as well as internationally. But that is my biggest feedback on that part. But the tools are there, and you have major corporations stepping up. You have major research universities stepping into play. You're seeing uh, government action, but even more importantly, NGO action that is stepping up and playing in this space. And you're seeing international versions of law enforcement like Interpol, which is one of the only true international law enforcement groups, beginning to say this is a very critical partner. Let us collaborate. Let us use group intelligence. Let us use the fact that we're digital and connected, and let's bring those systems to bear to solve this problem at the root levels. And the root levels are international. Here in Austin, we have the F1 race happen every year. Tremendous international inflow for that race. You cannot believe the number of exploited children that come in as part of that F1 race. And I can tell you here in Texas and in Austin, we have special programs that happen every time that the F1 race comes to town, and they help liberate quite a few number of children. They help bring charges against quite a few offenders. But we need to take that and expand it beyond a event and look more broadly across the world with that, because those type of things happen globally. And they're great opportunities to be able to make not a dent, but a major beachhead towards solving this problem. So Sharif, I hope that answered your question. And Tom, I hope that feedback is beneficial to you as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks for that. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have few questions from our audience, especially Mr. David Schumacher and Mr. Gannady bring some important questions for today's sessions. I think it's very long. In the comment section, we already share first actually Mr. Gannady's questions. Then we share Mr. David Schumacher questions. So, Mr. Thomas, what sections you want to answer from the questions?
Yeah, well, it's quite a few actually. And I got a good one. I can share my screen here from Ben Balwig, and it'd be good to get your ideas on his question. But let's deal with this one first. This one from Gennady. Yeah, either
Yes.
one. Yeah, but what this is yeah, it would be hard to get privacy advocates in line with this using NSA or using the Patriot Act, but since Snowden, it has become more narrow. It's a very specific that they need to have specific warrants, FISA warrants, that type of thing, but I put planetary in the name on purpose because this is an international thing, and by promoting or the idea of using the NSA and the Patriot Act, it's a little bit of an overreach, because that will get attention, but the fallback from that would there would be our social media companies who have all this data as well. They would be afraid of the NSA or the Patriot Act coming after them, and so they would probably release or get in line behind this effort. Now, I think those are good tools if we use a shard of Prism or a way to use the Patriot Act in our favor. But again, these child traffickers are American citizens often. But we need to make this international. Like David was saying, this has got to be a global effort, and that's what it is ultimately. And by doing this planet-wide, it will make the locals, the domestic traffickers, shake in their boots, ideally. And so that's the point too. Is that the privacy advocates shouldn't worry, because it will make we will have it'll be very narrow. It will use these tools for good, There's a better answer I have for that, but let me just share Ben's question here. And see if this works. There it is.
I want the cost-benefit analysis. How much privacy will we lose, and how many children will be saved?
Let me play it one more time.
I want the cost-benefit analysis. How much privacy will we lose, and how many children will be saved?
And that's a good question. I mean, that's a very good question. And that's the point of all of this, why we're talking about this now, is because what do we surrender in our civil liberties to help these children? And that's why I'm saying this could be a temporary, a 2-3 year operation that could be sunsetted, but shed a little bit of light in this dark place for a while. So there's a lot of ethical considerations. There's a lot of privacy considerations that we need to take into account. But I think the upside of using these tools, will be tremendous. The upside of saving children and destroying a lot of these trafficking networks is an upside. And so again, we need to lose the denial that privacy is still a thing. And and if it's not a thing, that we need to use the tools that are working against us for this purpose. And again, I don't care which tool it is, whether it's the NSA or the Patriot Act, but that is a way to make the point that we need that type of data, that type of system to use these to destroy these networks. And that will also, I think, our social media companies here in America have almost as much data as the NSA does, right? And so, and there's a lot of them that need a PR move themselves. Facebook with all their issues with privacy, and to use the information that we've surrendered to them to help in a limited time to identify and destroy these child exploitation networks is, I think, the best way to go about this. And so, it's a little bit of an overreach to push for the NSA and the push for the Patriot Act, but the fallback from there, the bounce back from that would be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and we could get some really domestic operations destroyed. And so, the question is, this is the big question, is how much privacy will we relinquish, and how many, compared to how many children we will save? To me, the answer is easy. If it's a limited time, and we can sunset this operation, and if we have transparency, and there's all these aspects that we can use to make this a temporary and transparent operation, and really make a real dent in this stuff. And that's really the kind of the core.
Daniel, you want to add any comments?
Yeah, there's some other interesting considerations that I think have been kind of ignored in our legal theories. And one of them is that the rational part of a teenager's brain is not actually fully developed until age 25. So actually, we have a lot of laws that grant all kinds of bundles of rights and privileges to people at age 18 and age 21. But people are not necessarily making adult decisions with their prefrontal cortex not fully formed. So that's another challenge that we might want to look at legally. And then kind of something that ties into the cost-benefit analysis of privacy versus security. It's how many innocent people are you willing to lock up to catch 1,000 guilty ones? Some of the founding fathers said it's better if we lock up 0 innocent people, but that's obviously not what's going on today. I think we've vastly over-erred on the side of catching innocent people in the guilty net right now. So and part of that could well be these laws that have moved the age of consent way down below the age of brain maturity. So that's another thing that needs to be thrown into the debate. I love, Abraham Lincoln supposedly said, the philosophy of the schoolroom today will be the philosophy of government in 20 years. And that's something we need to be looking at. Are we raising people that are based on, a fact, that are immersed in facts? I think the statistic I was trying to remember earlier was that people born after the year 2000, like half of them don't believe that NASA astronauts landed on the moon. That's they go, oh yeah, NASA, those are the guys that are on the space station. But yeah, that whole moon thing, I saw some videos that that didn't happen, or it's a real problem. All the misinformation that is just swimming on the internet. And if you want to see prediction of the future, watch the movie Idiocracy. They've got Charlie Chaplin tried to take over the world with dinosaurs. I mean, it's like it won't be too long if this trend continues. All these people choosing their own reality, making up their own history, making up their own presence and future. So this is a critical time for adults to mentor younger people with fact-based, evidence-based, real knowledge, and that's something we really need to ramp up. And I hope these neighborhood level science, citizen science portals kinds of things that can happen, that the block by neighborhood block level can really involve adults and children, and make this intergenerational reclaiming of our fact using professions and our fact using civilization. So that all ties into the human trafficking and exploitation issue. Maybe not directly, but it's tangential. I would also note that we've got a World Day Against Human Trafficking. If you want to commemorate that or celebrate, that's every July 30th is the proclaimed day for that. And David, I was so glad to get your whole systems analysis. So you're a wicked problem solver on the whole systems front, and it's always great to hear your contribution. And yes, I think Interpol is the correct nexus of intelligence and enforcement action, because it is international. In fact, I would like to see all national conflicts resolved as police actions. It's like you wouldn't bomb Chicago because you heard there's some bad people in Chicago. You would get the police to go get the bad people. But right now war is the equivalent of just mass destruction of geographic areas because there's some bad people or some bad actors or bad effects going on. So we really need to scale back our use of force using agencies to be more fact driven. And the
Daniel,
is a great place to start.
Daniel, I agree with you about bombing Chicago. Now, if you had used California as your example, I might not have been so agreeable. But Sherry, I want to tell you that this is yet another example of how an international forum, such as the World Talent Economic Forum, has the ability to shine a bright light on challenges that work across developing and developed nations, that work across country geographical boundary lines, that cross the bridge between what a startup innovator entrepreneur could do to what a seasoned political veteran, to what a university professor can contribute to it, and how corporations can have a major impact with what we're seeing with things like what Microsoft is doing here, like what the University of Edinburgh is doing in UK and others. They are the ones that can help take a Technopolis approach and solve this problem. And last comment, because I do have to get on another call, is that, Tom, is one of the things as you go across your platform and look at them, I would also encourage you to embrace not necessarily the terminology, but the concepts behind a technopolis approach. And that is what's made many of the regions around the world transform themselves. Austin's one example, Singapore is another that has employed the technopolis approach, and others. And it's definitely one, when I look at the goals that I've heard from y'all's party, that could bear fruit as you look at that. So Sharif, thank you so much again for allowing me to take part of this and for your invitation being here. But thank you so much. And I do have to jump for this other call. So thank you all again.
Thanks, David. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. David. Thank you. Mr. Daniel, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Well, Technopolis approach, that is something that we should make the key words for the United States Transhumanist Party. And, that's something that we can do when we have a fresh slate to work with, such as the seasteading idea. You're not taking up anyone's land that people have already fought over or monopolized. But we can also do this stuff is digital twin simulations in advance of actually deploying it. And I think that's what we need to do actually with our local situations is create these computer digital simulations of who could be doing what with who and cooperating with who, and have in this transition to a quality based technopoly or an economy based on quality rather than just quantity. Like I love to mention the Kingdom of Bhutan that no longer measures their economy with gross national product. They do gross domestic happiness. So, each neighborhood block could become an experiment in gross local domestic happiness, and we can gamify these things with citizen science portals. And I think Spaceship Earth is going to be composed of a bunch of Dunbar tribes of 150 people that are using AI to become better and better quality of life and love-based economy. So that's going to solve a lot of problems, and I think the USTP will be leading the cheerleading squad. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, yes, it's been great. And thanks again, Sharif, for doing this series. We're going to be continuing on until the election, I think, every Tuesday at this time. And I encourage the viewers to use the comment section on YouTube to ask questions about this particular initiative. And also you can see our initiatives at the transhumanist-party.org. They're on the page there. And you should also join the party, come to our party, and become a member. It's free. And you'll get a lot of access to what we're doing. And so and so again, ask your questions in the comments. We will answer them either in the comments or on the next show. It doesn't matter. Check out the future initiatives that we're having that are coming up, and ask questions on those. And so again, thanks, Sharif, for doing this series. It's going to be very important. We're going to try to make it very formulaic and very consistent in the way we approach this, so that our messages get out there consistently and clear.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Tom Rose. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Beside today's dialogue, one of the think tank from London, Wellness Consulting, they are coming to Bangladesh to solving these human trafficking issues. I think Jackson, also another entrepreneurs from Singapore, they are working for solving these issues, BRAC solving these issues. Bangladesh has major problems with this Myanmar, with this Rohingya, and many developing nations also has same issues. So if you want to do real projects, we are happy to do that because we believe in action. Action play the real roles, so we solve the social problem. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. I request all of our audience, please share our content with the government agency, corporation, and academy. World Talent Economy Forum, beside this dialogue, we published a lot of research papers, We are organizing very high quality conference with the government, with the academy, like Nikola Tesla Technology Conference. This coming October, we have a conference. Beside that, we are developing real projects, uh, business incubations, and a lot of startup. So those who want to support our initiative as an investors, as an thinkers, as a mentors, you can join World Talent Economy Forum. Hopefully, your contribution will change millions of people's life. Thank you, everyone, those who join regularly to World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you, Mr. Thomas, and thank you, Mr. Daniel. Thank you. Bye bye, and take care.